Welcome to another edition of the Pony Pundits. I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined today by my good friend Sig. You can follow him on Twitter at Sig Las Vegas. Sig, how are you today on this fine Friday afternoon in your part of the country? For me right now, it's lunchtime. I know, lunchtime all the time for me. How you doing, Sig?
I'm doing pretty good, and you stole my punchline there. You are sitting right now. I'm actually doing pretty well right now. We're sitting on live Pick 5 tickets and Pick 4 tickets at Gulfstream going into the 5th race here.
Oh, nice. So we might get some live reactions from Sig as a race goes here. I can't do that. I had to shut the TV off because I would be glued to looking at the races. Sig, we got a good card today. Tell everybody I'm going to lay out the show for everybody. We're going to be talking about the Kentucky Derby Leaderboard. We're also going to be talking about the controversy with the Kentucky Derby future pool. Pool 4 was just announced this week, and you can bet that through this weekend. And this weekend, Sig, normally is one of the best weekends of the prep season for the Kentucky Derby. This is the big weekend where we would have had the Bluegrass, the Santa Anita Derby, and the Wood Memorial all on the same day. And we're going to get none of them, 0 for 3. All of those tracks are canceled right now in a holding pattern. Sig, tell us about the current Kentucky Derby leaderboard right now. And for people that don't know, to get into the Kentucky Derby, one, you have to have made the sustaining payments to the Kentucky Derby. And that starts as when the horse is a weanling, you start making nominations to different stake races, and you keep making sustaining payments up until the year of the race. Including that year. And then even though you've made the payments, you might not get into the Derby if you don't have enough points. And only 20 horses can get into the Derby. So securing those points are why we have all of these Kentucky Derby prep races. And right now, tell us where the leaderboard is at. And the horses on the top few, they're good. They don't have to worry about making any more points.
Right. The top 2 horses right now on the leaderboard are Tiz the Law, who won last Saturday's Florida Derby in pretty impressive fashion. Second is the Louisiana Derby winner, Wells Bayou. The Louisiana Derby was the other prep run in the past couple of weeks here at Fairgrounds. Like you said, normally today or tomorrow would be a huge day for Kentucky Derby prep races. And right now, the only prep left on the schedule is the Arkansas Derby, which is at Oaklawn, and they moved that to the first Saturday in May, which would normally be Derby Day.
Yeah, and this is a thing where you say the only ones that are left on the schedule, and by that we mean still has a date attached to it. The other races are still out there. Tracks are deciding what they're going to do when they come back to racing, if they can move the date to a different time. But it's going to affect a lot. And when we talked last week, I mentioned to you that one of the things that was an issue in the past won't be this year, and that's a horse that didn't race as a 2-year-old. That has been a long-standing tradition that when it comes to that first Saturday in May, if a horse didn't race as a 2-year-old, he doesn't have much of a chance moving into the Derby and winning. Justify changed that. But this year, there's another horse that fits that criteria that didn't race at 2, and I think is going to benefit from the later Kentucky Derby, and that would be the horse Charlatan. This is a horse that only has 2 starts, and ironically, for the same trainer that trained Justify, that other non-2-year-old racing horse that took the Kentucky Derby and Triple Crown, with just 2 starts this year. Having the later Kentucky Derby, I think, is going to be a big asset to him as long as he can get some points to get himself into the Derby.
Right. I don't think he has anything to be concerned about there. I do expect a number of these Derby preps to be rescheduled later throughout the summer once things get back to quasi-normal. The Keeneland's already said that they're planning on running their spring meet now in July. Actually, before we just came on air, I just got notice that the Preakness has been postponed with no new date listed either. But they may still run the Belmont in June, and the Triple Crown order may be reversed this year. We may see the Belmont Stakes run, followed by a Preakness sometime over the summer, including with the Kentucky Derby. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But the Del Mar meets in July, usually opens in July, runs through August. Word is they're going to try to have a Derby prep, since there will be an opportunity to earn points here in between the original Derby date and the new Derby date now in September.
Yeah, good stuff. And before we swing into the Kentucky Derby future book, Sig, I would just want to tell everybody watching the show, if you like horse racing information or any of the shows that we have here on Wager Talk, do us a favor. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the notifications button. This way, anytime a show goes live, you'll know about it. You'll be the first to know. You won't miss any shows. And quite frankly, we appreciate you following us as we build our subscriber base. I also want to let you know that Sig, it puts up, you're doing Gulfstream. Normally this time of the year, you would be switching over to the Keeneland meet. But as you said, no Keeneland spring meet this year. And I know that's your favorite meet of the season, Keeneland. And I've been to Keeneland several times in one of my favorite racetracks. And it's a shame. Horse racing in the entire state of Kentucky, but in Lexington, that's where most of the breeding farms are for both. There's a lot of thoroughbred breeding farms there, but there are also a lot of harness racing, standardbred, their sport that I own horses in. And Lexington, just a beautiful city. And I know whenever I visited there, it's one of the only racetracks I've ever been to that whenever the horse would come back to the winner's circle, the grandstand on Grand Circuit Week, they would stand up like somebody just hit a grand slam in baseball when they would be crossing home plate, standing up, cheering and clapping, giving a standing ovation. In Kentucky, horses are respected athletes. They're like, gods, the way that we would, follow a LeBron James or whatever. Everybody has their favorites. So disappointing for them. But you will be continuing to do Gulfstream Park every day that they're racing. You can pick up Sig's card every day at Wager Talk for just $9. I also going to be doing on the weekends some tracks. I'll pick whatever tracks that we have available, and I'll pick some of the better races from around the country. So there could be a little bit of crossover with me at Gulfstream, but I'll be trying to hit some of the other tracks as well. Looks like the best racing in the country in the abbreviated schedule is going to be Gulfstream Park right now, Sig. Moving to the controversy. The future book came out, and Sig, what the controversy is about is a lot of people are upset because the Kentucky Derby date has been moved. And as we said, it benefits some horses and it's going to hinder some horses, because horses that were on their schedule and ready to go for that first Saturday in May, now the trainers and connections have to keep those horses fresh and ready all the way to September. Oh, I can tell you as a horse owner, about 100 million different things can go wrong between now and September in keeping horses in top form. They're not, they're athletes, but they're not machines. Injuries occur. In one of the best 2-year-olds, and I was talking with you right before we went on air, Maxfield's a horse that we haven't seen. He was 2 for 2 as a 2-year-old and was going to be favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and had to scratch with a front leg injury. We have not seen this horse yet this season. Now, having the later Kentucky Derby date gives him an opportunity to heal and get back on the trail and in training that maybe he can be ready for September. But if the Derby was as scheduled, this is one of the best 2-year-olds in the country last year that would have no shot. And why people are upset with these Derby pools is this is the fourth one. They come out in different sequences. The first one comes out, last year as 2-year-olds. And then there's the late winter, early of this season, and then the final one. But now that there's a difference in the date, people feel that they should refund the money from the earlier pools because it's not going on the date scheduled. But Churchill Downs has said, no, they're going to go as scheduled. If you have a ticket, it's live. There will be no refunds.
Right, and there are a number of people out there upset about it. I can see both sides. I know, and you have to, when you place a bet on anything, whether it's sports, horses, etc., you have to know what the parameters are. And in most cases, all bets are action, no matter what date the event's played or run. So in this case, people that may have placed bets back in September or December on these Derby future polls were counting on the Derby being run the first Saturday in May, as it has been since May of, I believe, 43, 44. I think World War II was the only time they had to reschedule. But now they have live action bets on horses that may not even be running come this September for Derby Day. Or there's a number of other horses that have risen to prominence since last September and last December when they may have originally placed these bets that make their wager possibly obsolete.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. And what Churchill Downs is saying is, as long as the Derby is run in 2020, it's a go, no refunds. And a lot of sporting events, have the stipulation that game's got to be played on the date scheduled, or there's refunds. Now we've seen different things with what's happened because of the shutdown of sports right now. Things like season win totals obviously are getting refunded, but future bets as far as winning divisions or winning the championship, those are still sitting there waiting to see what the sports are going to do. Now, basketball, obviously, that was a different story in college basketball because they officially canceled the whole thing. So everybody got their money back on those ends. And there were a lot of unhappy people because I know one of the buzz teams early in the season in college basketball was the Dayton Flyers. And they were as high as 200-1 back in November to win the national championship. Dayton was going to be a number one seed in the college tournament. And, guys that had tickets at 200-1 or 100-1, 150-1 and have a number one seed and have to get their money back on that bet, obviously you can understand how they would be disappointed. With the future book being later, do you see anything, any horses that you would pique your eye or anything that you would want to get involved, or because of all of the uncertainty, this is a year where you just scrap the futures and, handicap as goes?
I normally do look, and normally this is the future book that I look at is the one here right on the last big prep weekend of the season. I'm not going to look at anything right now just because there is so much uncertainty. The only prep race left on the schedule right now is the Arkansas Derby, when no signs to point to when we may see a Santa Anita Derby. We may see a postponed Bluegrass. We may see a postponed Wood, where they may even occur. I mean, Aqueduct races may occur at Belmont. Belmont races may occur at Saratoga. Everything right now on the schedule is up in the air, and until we get some more sense of normalcy, I would pretty much just hang loose and play the cards on a daily basis.
Yeah, Sig, obviously a few years ago when we talk about that big Kentucky Derby where I hit the trifecta, the reason for that is I didn't have per se the winner wasn't my key horse. My key horse was the horse that ran second that day, and that was an instance where after the prep races and that final weekend of getting the final futures pool, I went here and had a sizable position on Looking at Lucky. Was it Looking at? It was
Looking at Lee.
Looking at Lee. He was by Looking at Lucky. Okay, Looking at Lee, and that was because in his final prep race, this horse had all kinds of road trouble in that. And it was one of those situations where, nobody was going to give this horse a look in the Kentucky Derby because, he didn't get that, big race. And I just knew that, with all the trouble he had, the horse was full of pace in the lane. And I made a position and I got down on the horse at 40-1. And, he finished second in the Derby, so I didn't win that future bet. But obviously at 40-1 and have a horse that finished second and at the top of the lane. I wasn't sure if he was going to reach or not. It was a pretty exciting time, and that's something as we move forward when we're talking about handicapping, and I'll explain going back and looking at these prep races and how you look at them and how to use the visual handicapping to your advantage. Speaking of handicapping, let's talk about, before we get into, we're going to have some free picks for everybody today. We'll have a free race of the day for Saturday. That'll come from Gulfstream Park. And then we're going to give a free pick 4 from Oaklawn Park. But before we do, let's recap the 2 big prep races that we did have the last 2 weeks. This past Saturday, of course, the Florida Derby. 'Tis the Law laid the law down and stamped himself as one of the favorites, if not the favorite, for the Kentucky Derby. Sig, what did you make of his performance on Saturday?
He showed me exactly what I expected from him. He actually needed this race going into the Florida Derby. I knew he was going to have to be primed up for the Florida Derby because he was sitting there in the low teens on the Derby leaderboard, and he needed these points in order to ensure himself a spot in the Kentucky Derby. So I knew that his trainer, Barclay Tagg, was going to have him nice and primed up for this race. He went out there, did exactly what was expected of him, and basically put the field away.
Yeah, it was an impressive race for him. And then the Saturday before, the big race was the Louisiana Derby. And, of course, Nadal, a big performance there. And, as good as 'Tis the Law looked on Saturday, I go back to Nadal's race. And to me, he did everything you want to see a young, lightly raced 3-year-old do. Obviously in those first couple of races, you see a horse dominate the field wire to wire, and you think that, okay, yeah, that's nice. Horse looked good. But really, how tough was the competition? And, if he went wire to wire, set his own fractions and everything, that can braven a horse up on the front end if he wasn't tested. Well, in the Louisiana Derby, he got all the tests thrown at him because, yes, he contested the lead again, but he wasn't uncontested. There was somebody at his throat the entire race. He was also stretching from 1 turn to 2 turns, which oftentimes you don't know how a horse is going to react until they actually do that. He answered that bell. And then in the stretch, after he put away the horse that had battled him the entire race, he comes back, and so many times you see it, a front runner goes, they weren't suicide fractions, but they were good fractions, but they were contested. He never got that to be able to relax the horse. Put that other horse away. How many times you see him put that first contender away, and then one of those horses that were sitting just off the pace comes on for that second challenge, and so often, gets that horse in the stretch because he hadn't been used yet. Well, he put that fresh horse that come at him away, and I was really impressed with Nadal in that race. What were your thoughts?
Oh, actually, Marco, just so we don't confuse the viewers, you're referring to the Rebel, I believe, at Oaklawn, where they dominating performance wire to wire.
Okay, so, my bad on that one, yeah.
I like the fact that he got out there. He got an early lead. Like you said, he was contested, but he never really had to dig in and fight for it, and he did have enough energy here to close out the race. So I still am interested in seeing another race out of him. I'm not sure he's the best Baffert going into the Derby right now, but he is definitely an impressive horse, and I look forward to seeing his next race.
And he sits in that future pool at 6-1. And just to give the leaders on the future pool, you've got Nadal at 6-1. You got 'Tis the Law at 6-1. You got Charlatan, as we said, he's sitting at 8-1. And you can bet the field, and the field is any other 3-year-old that's not on the list. There's 23 horses on the list, and then the field is the 24th entry. The field is 5-2, and I think that the field is going to get more money this year than any other year because of the uncertainty of somebody that can, jump up, have a late bloomer, pick up a race that's a prep race that has the 100 points automatic to winner later in the season and jump in that we might not even have seen yet on the radar. And would you agree with that, Sig?
I agree completely. And for those who don't know, the future books work sort of the same way. The numbers that Marco just gave you are basically the morning line odds of the future book. What they'll do is they'll take the wagers here now through Sunday, I believe. And then once they close the book, you're going to find out what your true odds are on that bet. That field bet is showing at 5-2 right now. I expect to see that come in lower once they close that book.
Yeah, unlike normal future books, like here in Vegas, if you bet, on future books for the Derby and such, when you make that bet and you get your ticket, you're locked in. That's, a non-parimutuel wagering. The future book through Churchill Downs is parimutuel wagering, which, just as you said, Sig, that's what, the odds will change until post time, which post time will be I think they close it this Sunday after all the races this weekend. And then those prices will be locked in at what you have. Let's go, Sig, and take a look at Saturday. You picked race 8 on the card for Saturday, Gulfstream Park. And when you sent me the text yesterday, and I said, what race do you want to do for the race of the day? And you sent it to me and said, trust me, you'll like it. And then when I looked at it and I saw immediately why, I said, well, I know I'm going to have fun with this race. I don't know if you're going to have so much fun because I'm going to be bringing up once again how you dropped the ball on a horse Saturday. And that horse is number 3, Looking Like a Queen. And that's the horse that I had told you to put into your virtual stable and let me know next time the horse run, because I told you the horse was going to be a winner.
You did tell me that, and I did pick this race for that reason, Marco. I knew that was coming up.
Yeah. Good job there. And the horse did race. But I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to come back with her today to win this race. I have her on the ticket, but went back and watched the replay of how easily I should have cashed a winning ticket had I known she was in, and watched that race. And for everything that went wrong for her in the race before, why I told you she was going to win, everything went perfectly right for her in this particular race. And she ran down number 2, Ghostly Beauty, who's right back in this race. And a couple of reasons why I'm not going to come back with her in this race. And I'm going to actually go to flip the script and have Ghostly Beauty be the horse that wins this race. Number 2 is Ghostly Beauty was the horse that did the work, had the lead in deep stretch, and it was Looking Like a Queen that had the perfect trip after the battling horses up front, and then was able to angle out with no trouble, unlike the week before, and come back. She was the fresh horse, hadn't been used yet, and got up and got past Ghostly Beauty, winning by 3/4 of a length in that race. Now, here, I'm looking for the horse not to get that perfect trip and for Ghostly Beauty to move forward off of that last race. But more importantly, Looking Like a Queen got claimed out of that race, Sig. And normally, I do like to look at first off a claim. That's another angle that we'll talk about in one of the coming shows for handicapping. But in this particular instance, this is not one of those cases where I'm going to look at first off a claim, because I think this is a huge negative, because it got claimed off one of the best turf trainers in the country. I don't see how the new connections can improve. And normally when you're claiming a horse, and I've claimed many horses in my day, okay? And knock on wood, I've been pretty successful with the claims that we've done. And in combination of talking with my trainer and watching horses myself, when I see a horse that I'm interested in claiming, there's a couple things that I think we can improve on that particular horse, and that's why we're going to claim the horse to move it up. Maybe, they're using a lesser jockey. Maybe I don't think that particular trainer is one of the better trainers on the grounds, and I think that my trainer's better. That in itself will improve the horse. Maybe different, in this case, there's turf horses, there's dirt horses, and so forth. But when you're claiming off the best, one of the best, if not the best, turf trainers in the country, I don't see how you're going to benefit taking this horse. And you're going from Luis Saez, who's been red hot down at Gulfstream, who was riding the horse, and now you're going and I don't want to insult the current jockey, but he's not Luis Saez, just plain and simple. So I think this horse is going to take a step backwards. What do you think?
I agree completely. Actually, I don't even have the 3 Looking Like a Queen on my ticket. I agree that it's a big step down from the Maker Barn. And the only thing I can see is Connections trying to do here is they claimed her last out for $16,000 and have her in today for a tag of $20,000. So they're looking to either make a quick $4,000 or possibly collect a check on the race.
Yeah, and they're going for a decent purse here. The purse is $41,000. So if you win this race, you got more than your claiming price back right out of the gate. But I am going to go to number 2, Ghostly Beauty, for my horse on top, and underneath for exactas, I'm going to use the 4, the 3, and the 7. Is my 3 underneath horses in exactas. But my horse to win the 8th race, our race of the day, is number 2, Ghostly Beauty. Where are you going, Sig?
Well, actually, we agree on the 2 as our top selection here. You basically covered all the points I had for it, so I'm not going to waste any time on that. My second choice here is the 4, Yolanda's Pride. I like the jockey change to Joel Rosario, and I think he can work out a nice trip for her here. My third choice in here is the 9. Here Comes Jackie, 10-1 the morning line. The filly's shipping in from Tampa Bay Downs and has placed twice at Gulfstream in 5 career attempts. She can regain the form she showed in her previous races here. I think she could be a factor and hit the board. The other horse I'm using in my exotic bets is the 1 horse, and that is Lady Panda. So what I'm looking to do here is a $10 win place bet on the 2, Ghostly Beauty, if we can get 5-2 or better on her. And then let's also play a $3 exacta box with 2, 4, and 9. That's $18. And we're going to play a 50-cent trifecta box, 1, 2, 4, 9. That will cost you $12. So total bets of $50 on race 8. Let's see if we can bring something home.
Yeah, I'm going to go win in place on number 2, Ghostly Beauty. I think because the betting's going to be split between the 2 and the 3 here, although I think that some of the sharper bettors are going to shy away from 3 for the reasons that we said. And then go with those exactas, put the 2 on top of the 3, 4, 7, and then just save or bet. We'll turn it around and put the 3, 4, 7 on top with the 2 second. And you can do that wager. I would suggest a $5 exacta with the 2 on top of those 3, and then a $3 exacta with the 2 in the second hole. That would get you $24 wager on the exactas, and then bet win in place how you see fit. Sig, we're going to give a pick 4 for Oaklawn Park on Saturday, and Oaklawn Park is the only track that has a stake race this week, and that is part of the pick 4 on Saturday. Give us let's just go ahead, Sig, and give me your numbers for the for your pick 4 races, and then I'll come back and give my numbers, and then we'll just go through each race and talk about our top choices and or why we're going, 2 deep, 3 deep, or singling a horse out and so forth. So your pick 4 on Saturday, and this starts race number 7. This is the late pick 4 at Oaklawn Park. First race is race 7 on Saturday. That race is scheduled to start approximate post time 4:06 Central Time. So check that out on Saturday. Oaklawn, race 7. Give me your pick 4.
All right, Mark. This ticket is a lot bigger than I normally would play a pick four, but I did find a couple very competitive races in the sequence. We did go pretty deep on which this first leg here, race 7, I went 6 deep with 3, 2, 11, 6, 9, and 7. In the following race, race 8, I have a single. I go with a 5. In race 9, we're going 3 deep with the 8, the 4, and the 1. And we're concluding race 10, going 7 deep in a very competitive race with the 5, 4, 8, 7, 12, 3, and 2. It's a $63 ticket.
$63 ticket. So you're using 6 horses in the first leg, a single in the second leg, 3 horses in the third leg, and you're going 7 deep in the final leg. Sig, if you're live to the final leg, you better damn hit it. with 7 horses there, buddy. Now, you read the numbers out of sequential order. You read them in the order that you like the horses. For our listeners, if you don't want to have a ticket that big, you can trim it a little bit by knocking a horse off on one of the legs. And if you do that, knock it off on the final horse on each of your tiers because you put the horses in the order that you like, if $63 is out of your budget. For me, race 7, I'm going 4 deep, and I'm going with the 9, the 3, the 6, and the 2. 9, 3, 6, 2 in race 7 at Oaklawn Park. The second leg, race 8, 3 horses I'm going with, 5, 1, 3. Race 9, that's where my single is, and that happens to be the stake race. I'm going with number 8 as my single there, just number 8 in the third leg, race 9. And then in race 10, I agree with you. This is the most wide open race of the 4. I didn't go quite as deep as you did, but it is my deepest race. I went 5 deep with 4, 5, 2, 7, 12. Now, my particular ticket comes out to $30. It's a smaller ticket there. I think this is a great pick 4 sequence. And what's funny is you have your single in race 8. I have my single in race 9. And if you look at our selections for the others race that had the single, I have your horse as my top choice as well in race 8. And you have my horse as your top choice in race 9. So we didn't plan it this way, but I'm going to throw another free pick out there for you. You can play a daily double. We're going to call it the Pony Pundits Daily Double, race 8 and 9 at Oaklawn Park. And that daily double is 5, 8. You're going to play a daily double. You'll make that wager at the beginning of race 8 because what you're doing, a daily double, is 2 consecutive races. You're betting Sig's horse in race 8. Number 5, and you're betting my horse in race number 9, the 8. Cold punch daily double. What do you think?
I'll be punching that ticket.
All right, let's talk briefly here about the first leg. My top choice is the 9. You do have the 9 as well, but you have him all the way back as your 5th choice in this one. You've got the 3 as your top choice. I do have the 3 as my second choice, and that is the name of the horse, number 3. This is the age-old question. Now, when the millennials that are watching this show, they're not even going to know what we're talking about here, Sig, but Marianne or Ginger, which is it?
I'm a Marianne guy.
Yeah, I'm a Marianne guy, too. Now, I put a second part to that question is, if I was in a bar and a one-night stand, I'm all over Ginger. But if you're asking me for the rest of my life, Marianne or Ginger, it's Marianne. And we're making a reference to the Hitch television show from way. I don't even know what year that aired. I'll have to look that up. But Gilligan's Island, the two females on the show. Well, it was actually another female, but she was never in there.
Mrs. Howe.
No, yeah. If Mr. Howe passed away and Mrs. Howe got all the money, I might consider Mrs. Howe. I don't know, Sugar Mama. What do you think?
On that island.
But they were the two main female characters on there, and Marianne was the girl next door, and Ginger was the actress, and was always made up and wearing a dress and so forth. And yes, the age-old question. But you like the 3-horse. Tell us about it.
Marianne or Ginger is coming in here off a 10-month layoff, which is the same reason I have your 9-horse rank lower as a 4+ month layoff. But in this case, she won her only career start in a non-graded stakes last June at Belmont. So she broke her maiden in a stakes race at Belmont Park last summer. Talented horse, definitely has talent there. She's been working consistently well for a trainer who usually brings them back ready to go. So I look for a big effort here.
Well, you know what? That's almost my same reasons for my 9-horse on top. I'm coming off a layoff, but not quite as long of a layoff. And trainer Bill Mott is a guy that always gets horses ready to go out of the gate as well. And this is a horse that last seen at Churchill Downs in mid-November, raced on the front end in an allowance race, got collared late in that race, finishing 3rd. But I did like the effort, and I like the way the horse has had works moving up to this one. I'm going to go with number 9, Cardamom. But yes, Marianne or Ginger also right there. I do think this is a race that I went 4 deep in it, where you can make a case for a couple other horses that we put in there. And the horse that I put 3rd, the 6-horse, this is a horse that was off for over a year, or actually just a little right short of a year. Raced last March of 2019 before coming back and racing one start this year, March 14th. And the horse broke out of the gate, was running 3rd, and then faded in the stretch. I think they just needed that race on this horse. I'm throwing that line completely out and looking for a better effort from this horse. And given the works, went a 4 furlong, 48-2. And as we talked, if you watched last week's show, that 12-second per furlong is the barometer. So 48-2, the horse was clicking. I look for the horse to improve, and that might be a horse that gives us a little bit of a price on our ticket. So that's where I'm at with my horses in race 7. Let's go to race 8. I'll let you talk about that horse you singled, and I can't disagree. Go ahead.
My single in here is the 5, Answer In. It's a 3-year-old gelding here for trainer Brad Cox. This guy was nominated and was on the Triple Crown Trail. He was last seen running 3rd behind Silver Prospector and Wells Bayou, who came back to win the Louisiana Derby in the Southwest back in February. I think they realized that maybe Answer In wasn't ready for, or wasn't a Derby Trail horse, but I think he definitely is the class of the field coming here, and I don't see anybody in this field able to catch him.
Well, I agree with having him on top. The horse that I put second on my ticket, and why I didn't single the 5, was the 1 horse, Finnick the Fierce. And you talk about horses that were on the Derby campaign trail. Well, this definitely was a horse that was on that trail. In fact, this horse finished 2nd in the Kentucky Juvenile last year in the Breeders' Cup. And that was a big race, finishing 2nd to the same horse that you just mentioned, Silver Prospector. This is a horse that, if he runs back to form, and, he had the layoff, I think this is a horse that can improve on the back class. He's definitely got the most class in the field. Maybe not as good a form as you would like to see in that first start. But again, I think that race, they needed a start under the belt, and I think you'll see a better performance here. And then the other horse I threw in is might get us a little bit of a price, and that is General Trev. number 3 horse. This is a horse that out of the gate put up a 75 buyer. Easy win, breaking its maiden at Oaklawn Park last time out in February. This is a horse that's, trained well since then. I think that with only one start, Steve Asmussen at Oaklawn Park, he races well here. His horses, I think this is a horse that has a license with only one career start. You've heard me talk about this so many times. Those first 5, 6 starts of a horse's career, anything can happen. You can see horses jump like somebody turned a light bulb on and a switch just goes off. And I think this horse has a license to improve, and that's why I put him in here. But I cannot disagree with your horse on top. If I had to make it a single, I would agree with you and make the 5 the horse on top. Going to the next race, I'll take the lead since this is my single. And you would think that maybe I would look at a different race, being that this is the stake race for a single. But I really do think that the 8, Frank's Rocket, is the horse to beat here. This is a horse that 5 career starts, 2 wins, 3 seconds. First or second in every start. You're talking about one of the, best trainers in the country. William Mott's been around forever, gets his horses to the races. You talk about a horse that filly that was on raced the big races. Well, all of its races, you've had 5 career starts. 3 races have been graded stake races. He's had 2 grade 1s and a grade 2. He finished second in all 3 of those races. But first start out of the gate, this horse was ready to go. Put up a 98 buyer out of the gate. Now, if this horse doesn't bounce, and bounce is a term in horse racing that means sometimes if a horse goes too much in one race, they just don't come back the same way. It took something out of them, and they bounce form. But with William Mott, I'm not worried about that. The horse won easily. It wasn't like if you see a horse win by open lengths the way this horse did in that start, I'm not concerned about the bounce effect as if the horse put up a 98 and was battling the whole race and was all out to win. That's when you worry about a horse bouncing. This horse was in hand, winning by 7 lengths. That's my single. But I can tell you in handicapping the race, my 2 underneath horses that I have for my exacta punches in there are the 4 and the 1, which are your other 2 horses in that race.
Right, Marco. I mean, I agree completely on the 8 Frank's Rocket. Definitely looks like the class of the field here. As you said, she's never finished worse than second in 5 career starts. And I actually have a note here that I was going to talk about is if you want to cut the cost of your ticket dramatically, you could choose to single that horse here as well. And I will have a nice size daily double, which Marco has now turned a Pony Pundits double with the 6 in race 8 into the 8 here. I couldn't single Frank's Rocket here just for the reason that number
6 or 5. You said 6.
I'm sorry. Like I said, my notes.
I thought we caught that mistake earlier.
I fixed the one area, not the other. There were 2 horses in here that kind of scared me. And as Marco said, if the 8 horse bounces here, we could see another horse win this race. The 4 Edgeway won her debut back in February here at Oaklawn and put up an impressive 94 buyer for her debut race. That's a very fast buyer figure, winning that race by 5 lengths. She's facing definitely more experienced horses in here and might find it a little tougher going, but I can't take a chance and leave that horse off the ticket. My other choice here is Kamari, and we haven't seen Kamari here since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint last November. She may need this race here to get back going, but Mike Smith's coming in the ride for Wesley Ward. I'm not counting either of those 2 out here. I have to have Kamari on my ticket as well.
Yeah, I looked long and hard at Kamari whenever I was deciding to single this, and I just wanted to get the cost down of my ticket. And you pointed it out. Mike Smith coming back here to ride this horse. That's a good indicator. But on the same token, Mike Smith doesn't have anything to ride in California these days, as all the California tracks are shut down too. So let's put it this way. If the Santa Anita Derby was going as scheduled this week, and Mike Smith chose, with all the good racing on the card that would be that day in Santa Anita, and still came here, skipping Santa Anita, that would make, I would not be doing the single. I would have Kamari in there as well. Let's go to the 10th race, or is the race that we both say is anybody's race to win. I'm 6 deep. You're 7, or excuse me, I'm 5 deep. You're 7 deep. Tell about, no, I am, I'm 5 deep. Yeah. Tell us about this one and why you think this race is so wide open. Is it because they're all good horses? No.
That is normally not the case. And actually, if you look across the country, a lot of times the last race on the card is one of the most wide open races. It's almost always a maiden claimer, which means a maiden race is for horses that have not won a race yet. So we're looking at horses that haven't won a race. We're looking at horses that are usually in for a tag, which is the claiming price, which means they could be claimed by another owner or trainer in that race. It's usually not the best race of the day, and usually anything can happen. One of my biggest scores actually was forced out on the Rainbow Six a few years ago. We had a ticket that was a ballpark about $250. I was in with a syndicate of a couple other guys, and we went all in the last leg. And wouldn't you know it, 50 to 1 shot, bam, wins the last leg. $16,000 later, we're a happy bunch.
Yeah, and Seg, I've joked with you a few times that, especially at smaller tracks, but even so, Oaklawn Park's not a small track, Gulfstream's not a small track, but the fact that the last race is usually these type of races where it is a maiden race, it's also a race that you're oftentimes cheap claimers are the last race on the card, because you generally have fuller fields. They like to have the bigger fields for those last legs of the final pick 5, pick 4, pick 6, and so forth, to make things tougher. And I joke and say, oh, there's going to be shenanigans in the last race. Watch for a bomber. And it's not so much because it's shenanigans happening. It's just because the quality of the race. And we've talked about maiden races so many times that they're the worst to bet, because not only are you trying to handicap the unknown, some of these horses have only got, making their first start or only 1 or 2 starts. You don't got a lot to look at as far as form. You're not sure of what the connections agendas are on those races, as we said last week. Not all the time do they want to win and graduate from that class and go to non-winners, against winners, instead of a straight maiden. So, yeah, you can get some big prices, and that's why if you are going to go deeper in a race, this is the race type that you go deeper in. I have the 4-horse on top for mine, and the reason being, you've got 2 races under his belt. The horse has improved in each start after the previous one. A 67 buyer followed up by a 75 buyer. If he runs back to that 75 buyer, should win this race. I'm looking at that one. I have the 5 is my second choice. On form, the 5 looks better. I'll be honest with you. But this is also a horse that's had 8 cracks at being graduating from the maiden ranks. He's been second or third 7 of the 8 times. So this might be one of those ones where they don't want to leave this class and they're just racing for checks. But I can't leave him off the ticket because, he does show the best form. And then, try to get some prices in there. You've got the 2-horse this is another one. First buyer was a 52, and they jumped from a 52 to a 74. That's a huge jump on the buyer, and only got beat a neck last time out. If he makes another step forward, that horse can be there and win this race. So I could go on and on. Tell me your couple top contenders in here.
Okay, we agree on the 5 and the 4. I just have them in reverse order. What you said about the 5 Wild Union, I just put down, have you ever heard the phrase, always a bridesmaid, never a bride? This horse has finished second 5 times out of those 8 career races, twice in that 3rd spot. Maybe it doesn't want to win. Maybe they don't want to win. Maybe it just hasn't found the right spot yet. Maybe today is the spot. Aztec Empire, the 4, he's taking a step down in class today for a good trainer in Ron Moquette, who is on this circuit in Oaklawn. A couple that Marco didn't mention that I have are the 8, Mow and Go. Another horse taking a step down in class, and this is his 2nd start off a layoff, looking for an improvement on that factor. I like the 7, Copper King. The Connections have been patient with this horse. They bought him for $625,000, and he's running in a race today for a $60,000 purse total. So definitely a talented horse with some breeding in there. The step down may help, and maybe today's his day. I like the 12, On Dioro. He has a 2nd and 2/3 in his past 3 races. Once again, another one taking a step down. I really think, and I think Marco agrees, this race could be won by any of these horses. And the reason when we play a multi-race wager like this that we go deep in these legs is maybe you do hit that bomber, and that's how you make these tickets pay. Everybody's going to have the 5 in race 8. Everybody's going to have the 8 in race 9. It's having the tickets that don't have some of these horses on them that's going to make our ticket pay when it does hit.
Yes, absolutely agree with you. And there's a horse in here that neither of us have as deep as we went, and that's the 9, Looking High. All I can say is you've had 19 shots to break your maiden, and you haven't yet. You're not on my ticket. So there are the pick 4 for Saturday, and I'll repeat those again. My pick 4, first leg, race 7, 9-3-6-2. Race 8, 5-1-3. Race 9, I've got the 8. In race 10, 4, 5, 2, 7, 12. Sig, read yours with the correct single.
We have 3, 2, 11, 6, 9, and 7 with the 5, with 8, 4, 1, with 5, 4, 8, 7, 12, 3, and 2. That's a $63 ticket on a 50-cent base wager.
All right, and mine is a $30 ticket. You can get that. And then don't forget the Pony Pundits Daily Double. That is taking number 5 in race 8 with number 8 in race 9. That is the Cold Punch Pony Pundit Daily Double at Oaklawn, race 8 and 9. All right, as we're heading into the home stretch, we're going to keep this quick here. We want to keep this under an hour today, Sig. I'm going to ask you the difference between single race betting versus multi-race betting, and it's what makes you more comfortable. I'm more of the single race. I like to attack single races, win in place, hit my exactas, play some tries. You like to do the multi-race wagers, and explain the difference.
It's actually funny when we sit in a sports book together playing horses. Marco's been in exactas, trifectas on the same race. What I like to do is I like to spread my action out over with the multi-race wagers, daily doubles, pick 3s, pick 4s, pick 5s. And there's a reason for that. Number one, horse racing, like poker, if you play every hand when you're playing poker, you're going to go broke pretty fast. If you try to bet every race while you're watching horses, you're going to go broke pretty fast as well. It's picking spots and finding races that you like and horses that you like in spots. So why I like using the multi-race wagers is, number one, I have action in almost every race. Even if I don't particularly like the race, I might like a horse or two in that race, so I can spread my action out over multiple races that way. Whereas if you single or if you play a straight vertical bet in a race with an exacta or a trifecta, you're basically limiting your exposure to that race, but you're also giving yourself action in a race that maybe you don't like, that you don't really want to bet, but you're placing a bet because you just want that action. By playing those multi-race wagers, I think you get that action throughout the card.
Well, I will jump in and say
Marco,
one thing. As I said last week, one of the first things that my dad taught me,
Marco,
you can beat a race, but you can't beat the races. I will not attack each race in that fashion. And that's why, like with the reports that I sell, I'm doing races from different tracks or not the entire card. I'm singling in on the races that I have a higher confidence level in the way that race sets up. Like, you know, that last race on the card in that pick 4, that would not be a race that I would, you know, put a lot of money in on a single race. That I use it in a pick 4 because, as you said, you can, you know, you're minimizing your exposure doing that, playing the multi-race, but that would not be a race that I'm going to wager, you know, $50 to $100 on for just that race. So that's that situation
Marco
there.
D'Angelo, I think I'm live now. I just wanted to make sure you understood Sig's analogy. He was talking poker. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I know you don't know
yes,
how to play
definitely.
poker.
Yeah. We're gonna get that wager talk thing, and Sig can attest to. I know how to play poker. Okay. Me and Sig back in the day, that's how we met. That'll be a story sometime for story
please
time.
Tell us. Make it super long, really long.
No, this is a short one for story time because I want to get us out on the hour here,
God.
And we'll save some of the other topics that we had for handicapping to next week. But this overall, and as we talked about pari-mutuel
Marco,
wagering,
I screwed up.
Sig,
Marco, I screwed
whenever
up.
there's
I
a
want to
trifecta,
jump in and admit I accidentally muted you. You have to tell that incredible story that put me to sleep all over again.
you're kidding,
Hey,
right?
it happens,
Is this a
dude.
late April Fool's? Sig, could you hear
Yes,
me?
he heard you.
I
through
could hear
Skype.
you, yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, since our fearless leader muted me through that entire
Listen,
story,
consider
let's
it a
start
favor,
it again.
everybody listening.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Do you have me going live
Yes,
now,
Marco.
Prez, before I... All right. The Lost in the Fog race was at the Meadows. This had to be 1990s, maybe early 2000. And Sig, you've been to the Meadows several times. You know how the infield is sunken. And many times fog would roll in late at night. And when it would roll in, it would come across the track and just lay itself in that infield. And when it would just sit there in that infield, the Meadows was a 5/8 mile track. and they raced 1 mile races. So they would go 1.5 times around the oval. Well, when the horses would come around the grandstand for the first time, you could see all of the horses. When they went to the backside, from the half till they got to the top of the stretch, you could not see the horses if the fog rolled in. The 3 favorites, the first time they came through around the stands the first time, 1, 2, 3, the favorites were running. Then they went into the fog. When they came out of the fog, the 3 favorites were nowhere to be found. Somewhere from the half to the top of the stretch, everybody passed the favorites. 3 long shots came in. So this should have been a big payout as far as the tickets go. Nobody's going to have these combinations. Going to be just a few winning combinations, maybe even an all wager. And the price came back very short. Now, we talked about pari-mutuel wagering at the beginning of the show and how the number of winning, the number of bets changed the odds. The more winning tickets on a particular combination, the smaller it pays. Well, these guys that were involved in this might have been smart enough to rig a race, but they weren't dumb enough not to get caught. And how they got caught was, instead of just the people involved have one person play the trifecta the way that they had it set up, cash that one big ticket, and then divide that ticket, they're pounding and pounding these combinations that nobody should have. And the track was able to watch to see who were cashing the tickets on these winning trifectas, and they snatched them up and then, had one roll over on the other one, and 3 drivers got suspended. One got banned for life from the Meadows. And that was the Lost in the Fog race, where they had it set up and they had it nailed, but they were too stupid. Their greed, they kept pounding extra tickets to have more winning tickets. You only need, put it this way, Sig, if there is one pie and it's just me and you, we cut it in half, you get half of the pie and I get half of the pie. But if everybody gets a bunch of tickets, there's the same amount of pie, but there are a bunch of little slivers, and it drew attention to that race, and that's how they got caught. So that's our story time for this week. I want to thank my good friend Sig for joining me. Again, you can follow Sig on Twitter at Sig Las Vegas. Be sure to check out, once again, his daily sheets from Gulfstream Park. I'm Marco in Vegas. You can check out my sheet on Saturday for racing across America. Not a lot of tracks, but we'll cover some of them on Saturday. And of course, again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button. Hit the thumbs up. You like the video. We appreciate you staying tuned with this. And be sure each and every weekday, 3 o'clock Eastern time, we have a live show every day. Monday and Tuesday, Meet the Experts with Prez and a guest. Wednesday, it is the lovely Kelly Stewart, Minty Betts, and Johnny the Greek Gambler. Thursday, the lovely Minty Betts and Teddy Covers. And then on Friday, you got the horse and the horse's ass. You can figure out which one of the two of us is whatever. But till next week, guys, I hope to see you guys in the winner's circle.